Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the GAIS Spotlight Series. We are honored today to have a special guest from the Generation School. We will begin with a dua, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. May Allah bring benefit from this series and our guests, and may it be a source of sadaqah for all of those who use the knowledge that we have here, inshallah.
Inshallah, I mean.
This morning we have, or this afternoon, we have the director of the Generation School, Brother Shoaib Siddiqui, and he's going to share with us a little bit about their history and their programs. It is a unique type of school in Pakistan, and we were intrigued by the programming and the results that they have found at this school that may seem like a school that's been around for a very long time, for decades, but when we look at school history, it's actually young. So, welcome, Brother Shoaib, and please tell us a little bit about yourself and your school.
Right. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah. Thank you for the kind introduction, especially the introduction to the school. Alhamdulillah. So first of all, thank you, Sister Layla and Brother Abed and the GAIS team. Truly grateful for this opportunity to present, to share. It's a privilege to be here on behalf of the entire Generations team. And to share some of the practices, the approaches, the insights that have emerged out of the continuous experimentation and innovation that's been done at Generations for the past many years. As you said, decades, 33 years to be precise. I hope that this session is meaningful for everyone participating, inshallah. So this session, I've tried to prepare for it, and there's a lot to talk about, a lot to share. We'll try to balance everything out, inshallah. I'll start with introducing Generations, the history, the objectives, the campuses. We'll then skim through some of the recent practices that have evolved and how they resulted in strengths as well as challenges. And that will lead us on to a somewhat unique approach that we've been moving towards over the past few years. And we'll discuss why did we feel the need for it, how has it manifested so far, how has it been helping so far, and how might it evolve over the coming years. Now, please do keep in mind that I'm no scholar nor an expert on these matters. I'm simply sharing my insights as a reflective practitioner who's trying to look back at on how we've evolved and grown over the past few years and attempting to sort of connect the dots looking backwards. And at the same time, I'm constantly trying to chart sort of some trajectories going forward as well. So it's an exercise of self-exploration and self-discovery. And I recognize that presenting to such a diverse and extraordinary audience can be challenging, because if I delve too deep into the specifics, we may lose the relevance and applicability for most people. But on the other hand, if we remain too general and too broad, then the real context and impact may be lost. So I'll be trying to strike a balance between presenting broad abstract ideas on the one hand and demonstrating how they've been applied in our specific context. And I hope that you'll be able to see how these elements complement and synergize with each other. So for this reason, some of what I'll be sharing will include new and emerging vocabulary as well that tries to explain to fellow educators like yourself, looking from the outside in, what we've otherwise been working on at a much more organic and vernacular level. And that makes me a bit eager at the same time to hear feedback from those amongst the audience who are familiar with Generation School regarding the relevance of these abstract ideas being shared today to our day-to-day practices as you see them at Generations. So due to time constraints and to avoid unnecessary technical challenges, I've pre-recorded most of the presentation for today. And once we're through with this presentation, I'm really looking forward to the Q&A discussion, Q&A session, and the discussions with Sister Layla and the audience, inshallah.
Right.
So, Brother Idris, if you could please go ahead with the video. Thank you. So let's start by introducing Generation School. Generations was founded 33 years ago by a young Pakistani couple, a chartered accountant, and a medical doctor named Dr. Allah Siddiqui. They were planning to move back from Kuwait to Pakistan, and were in such they were in search for a school in Karachi for their 5-year-old son, a school with a strong academic foundation while being rooted in our Islamic values. However, when they were unable to find a school that met their criteria, they shelved their plans for setting up a hospital in Karachi and decided to establish their dream school for their son. And Generations was born. That 5-year-old boy, that was me just a few years ago. And ironically, I never ended up studying at Generations, but years later, I transitioned from my early banking career to education and joined Generation School as director. I'm blessed to be able to work alongside my parents, my father, who is always the greatest pillar of strength and faith behind the scenes, especially, and my mother, Dr. Ghazala, who, mashallah, continues to lead the institution as the founder, the principal, the CEO, and as my mother. Alhamdulillah, it's now the third generation in the story. My kids, my nephews and nieces, who are benefiting from the school as students alongside thousands of their peers, mashallah. So back in 1990, Dr. Ghazala began with 4 teachers and around 30 students in a small bungalow within the boundary walls of our residence at the time. Since then, alhamdulillah, the school has grown physically, academically, in terms of the practices, the approaches, the strategies. Today, we're blessed to be a community of 600 dynamic staff members and 3,600 students between the ages of 18 months and 18 years, mashallah. From the perspective of assessments and certifications, these students complete their O levels or IGCSEs in grade 11, and ultimately their A levels in grades 12 and 13. These 3,600 students and the 600 staff are housed between 2 sprawling and lively campuses, alhamdulillah. We'll take advantage of this virtual platform to take a quick tour around the physical space and environment, and that will hopefully set a context for the latter part of this presentation. The school's 2 campuses, the North Campus and the South Campus, form the foundation of the inspiring ecosystem we've been able to create, alhamdulillah. These campuses embody our values of openness, interconnectedness, and purpose, balancing structure and fluidity, as well as discipline and spontaneity. Aside from the classrooms, the campuses feature specialized spaces like audio-visual facilities, a number of robotics labs, various design technology labs, extensive libraries, and a lot more. The outdoor spaces are phenomenal. They include playgrounds and courtyards. This is one of our libraries that you're seeing at the moment. And again, back to the courtyard. So these outdoor spaces include playgrounds, courtyards, nature areas, not only for recreation, but also for connecting with nature, learning about sustainability and the environment, and of course, that sense of community.
Given 1.5 minutes to speak either for or against the topic. No prompting is allowed. Everyone, including the audience, is requested to respect others' opinion.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The topic for today's discussion is demilitarization in Kashmir justified or not? starting with Malik Oseno.
Okay, so the conflict over Kashmir has been the chief source of tension between India and
To promote a healthy and natural learning environment, we designed the buildings to be spacious, bright and airy, with large windows and wind catchers offering natural light and ventilation. Which brings me to one of my favorite aspects of the campus, and that's the balance between the public and private spaces. While the classrooms are certainly spacious, the common areas are intentionally larger, brighter, and more inviting. The wide corridors, the cool terraces, the leafy courtyards, the bustling atriums, they all encourage various interactions and experiences, and certainly elevate the school experience for everyone. This is one of our idea labs where you see the girls doing some woodwork, and these girls planning for their 3D models. And sports, of course, plays a very central part in all of this. It continues to thrive throughout the year in various shapes and forms, and then every single grade level, every section has an annual athletics and sports day, for which that's a massive event with lots of pageantry and performance, and it's good fun for everyone, alhamdulillah. This you see some. This is quite a unique building we call the Learning Hive, inspired by the beehive. And there are numerous thematic learning zones. This one is for robotics. And this next one is the Idea Lab, or the Design Technology Lab for the younger ones. And similarly, we have zones for art, for science, for math, zones for libraries, and all these are interconnected through a spiral ramp that the kids have a field day going through. And this encourages that creativity. So having all these pockets of spaces all over the place enables different clusters to be doing different activities. Here that you see the girls playing basketball or various other sports. So all this is happening in parallel. So all in all, alhamdulillah, we've designed Generations campuses to cultivate a culture of learning, growth, and excellence, where students feel happy, supported, and inspired to explore their full potential. So there we have it. That's the tour of the South Campus, and inshallah, you will see glimpses of the other campus, the North Campus for the younger ones, through some of the presentation. Now, from pretty much day one, the school's stated objective has been quality education. And for us, that meant academic excellence based on values leading to leadership qualities. And this principle has remained at the heart of Generation School's development over the past 33 years. And in recent years, we've elaborated on this concept through our Wings with Roots approach. And that represents our value proposition, and indeed the same represents our ongoing challenge. How do we inspire our children with the values, attitudes, and attributes for them to be confident, first and foremost, with their sense of purpose and identity? And having done so, how do we equip them with the knowledge, skills, and aspirations for them to transform themselves and the society to successfully meet the challenges of their generation and beyond. Now, taking this challenge on is far easier said than done. This requires massive, sustained, and systematic efforts. And that's why our vision statement starts with the aspiration to be a thinking institution that purposefully redefines education. Now, redefining education and doing it on purpose is a never-ending journey that involves experimenting, exploring, and discovering new things about our own selves and our students. It's a huge challenge, but it's also incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. Of course, redefining education is a lofty goal somewhere out there in the clouds that requires a sustained long-term approach. But on a more practical ground reality day-to-day level, our focus is on purposefully realigning our educational practices. It may be on purposefully re-envisioning our educational paradigms. And similarly, it may be on purposefully re-engineering our educational programs. So it's a constant struggle to make our efforts more intentional, meaningful, impactful, and sustainable. And it's all about systematizing aspects of the school and simplifying them constantly in search of better and more meaningful outcomes for everyone, inshallah. Now, to illustrate this concept, we can go through a couple of areas and practices at Generation School. We'll start with community and leadership, which is central to our entire experience at Generation School. Our two vibrant campuses provide the perfect foundation for a wide range of student leadership opportunities and activities. Students are encouraged to participate in clubs and societies, sports, gymnastics, and take on roles as mentors, captains, and prefects. This dynamic environment cultivates innovation and creativity and allows students to continually explore new challenges and develop lifelong learning skills and lifelong leadership skills. Our students don't just participate in events and competitions, they also take the initiative to organize them and host them. They actively engage in science Olympiads, dramas, Model United Nations, sports events, continuously honing their leadership and management skills in the process. And it's heartwarming to see that many of Pakistan's top universities have a significant number of Generations alumni in their organizing and managing committees for their renowned university level events. And alhamdulillah, that is an indication of the disproportionate effort on this front here at Generations, alhamdulillah. So another vibrant aspect of our community is what started off as Project Musakhar some years ago. The term Musakhar, of course, comes from taskhir, meaning the ability given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to harness various aspects of the world for our benefit. It's easy to get distracted by the wow factor of technologies these days, but it's essential to design the technologies program in a way that it serves students to enhance their engagement and learning, and serves teachers to elevate their teaching methodologies and pedagogies. Alhamdulillah, as part of Project Musakhar, our robotics program has thrived through the years. The program's structure sets it apart. It's an integral part of the mainstream curriculum from grades 3 till 9, rather than being an optional after-school activity, as is the case in many contexts and settings. This approach moves the focus of the students as well as the teachers onto the robots and robotics as a tool for critical thinking, problem solving, research, creativity, innovation, and a whole lot more, while also providing a practical test bed for mathematical and scientific concepts. Our students have participated in national and international robotics competitions like the first Lego League, and this greatly adds to their depth and rigor. In fact, it adds to the depth and rigor of their experiences and to the entire ecosystem. The success of our robotics program extends beyond these few students who compete in the national and international competitions, because preceding these international competitions, we hold internal rounds called the Generian Lego League competitions. And this allows hundreds of students to participate and benefit from these experiences. Senior students mentor, train, and coach the younger students, and this fosters a culture of learning and innovation that goes far beyond robotics. And alumni often return to judge these competitions, and this further reinforces this sense of community and curiosity. And ultimately, this infectious engagement permeates various other events and aspects of the school. It elevates the entire culture that promotes innovation and entrepreneurship. Students arrange the innovation fair every year. You'll see students transform into Muslim scientists or Greek philosophers from the bygone eras. You'll see them tinkering with the prototype solar-powered racing cars that are displayed by university students. And you'll see them debate on optimizing material costs. And some of them even present their projects through virtual and augmented reality. This is a good example of how, by aligning our education experiences and ecosystems, some small interventions can lead to massive sustained outcomes over the years, alhamdulillah. Moving on with the experience, encouragement, and enthusiasm from Project Musakhar, we embarked upon another ambitious project, which we called Project RAP. The word RAP in Arabic and Urdu means connectivity, continuity, and coherence. It also signifies relevance and grounding in our context, in our identity, and in our faith and beliefs. So Project Rapt has evolved into a broad-based, heavily embedded part of the curriculum through which students work actively and collaboratively on engaging projects that require multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary skill sets and applications, as well as lots of hands-on learning and problem solving. A good example is in grade 6, students start off by identifying problems in their own neighborhoods, and they then proceed to visualize their dream neighborhood of how they would resolve these problems and build that dream neighborhood. So this is the start of a journey that takes them through visualizing and creative writing with their Urdu teachers, for example. It takes them through designing surveys and taking those surveys with their English teachers, drawing their dream neighborhoods with their art teachers, and going back to the drawing boards when their math teacher suddenly points out to them that what they have planned for or what they aspire to fit into their neighborhood won't actually physically fit into their neighborhood because it's too much and too large. They end up having conversations and debates about the role and the place of a mosque or a park in the neighborhood, or the role of the police. They interact with architects, they make scale models of their neighborhoods, they evaluate each other's plans and models, they research dominant ideas on urban planning and architecture, and of course, much more. All their teachers and subjects come together to talk about a real problem and some real solutions, and they get their hands dirty and they use saws and hammers and all sorts of tools to put their ideas to the test. Through Project Rapt, we've been able to experiment with and to some extent break down many of the barriers that tend to limit us all as teachers and as students. Barriers between students learning and their own contexts, their own challenges, barriers between the various subjects and disciplines across the school, and barriers between the community needs and the community context and their school work. Now, over the years, we've been pursuing holistic learning by enriching the curriculum on various fronts, not only Musakhar and Rabt, as I just highlighted, but numerous other aspects such as sports, athletics, the Quran-centric curriculum, field trips, leadership days, and a diverse spectrum of clubs, societies, and events. While these aspects certainly enhance the learning experience on the whole, they also created challenges and sensory overloads for students and teachers alike. Until a few years ago, we aspired to develop our own curricula and resources aligned with our philosophies and our needs. Our enthusiasm for holistic learning led us to add multiple layers of enrichment to our curriculum. Teachers were expected to understand, incorporate, and execute these layers in their curriculum planning, in their classroom delivery and assessments. But this approach, which was very directly dependent on every individual teacher, was neither sustainable nor scalable. So while our O and A level results were consistently outstanding, alhamdulillah, the internal assessments and the curricula for other grade levels were in constant flux, causing difficulties in comparing results over time and diagnosing potential blind spots or slippages. Multidisciplinary project teams also face challenges as plans for transdisciplinary integrations fell through due to shifting curricula. It felt like building a complex structure on constantly shifting sands. The teams working on multidisciplinary projects also faced immense challenges as their plans for transdisciplinary integrations fell through due to the ever-shifting syllabi and curricula. So it felt a bit like building a complex structure on sand that was constantly shifting. So this realization led us to a fundamental decision. We needed stable, systematic anchor points, and we needed a mechanism that helps us maintain a balance between these innovative projects on the one hand and the traditional academic subjects, providing a stable foundation for our students and ultimately for the entire learning program. And so just a few years ago, we started our pivot to a much more standards-based approach. This approach is still taking shape today as we speak and continues to evolve in name as well. So for the purpose of this presentation, we can call it the Adaptive Curriculum Ecosystem, ACE or ACE. We realized that instead of reinventing the wheel, we could use an adaptive framework like ACE to leverage the best parts of the existing curriculum frameworks and programs, which tend to be well researched, thorough, and offer recognition, credibility, and support. Somewhat counterintuitively, incorporating these stable foundations and structures has enabled us to be more flexible, not less, and more adaptive on the ever-changing sand dunes of education. These foundations help us to build and develop our unique curriculum in ways that were not possible before. In some aspects, the ACE acts much like the weaving process, intricately connecting various strands to form one cohesive fabric. In fact, if the fabric is woven well, the users hardly ever notice the weave and weft and the differences in the materials, the differences in the directions of those materials and their characteristics. It all blends to make one unified whole, one coherent experience. So we're calling this an ecosystem, but what makes it an ecosystem and what makes it adaptive? To understand this better, we can think of it in terms of 7 broad principles. First, it's purpose-driven. Like a natural ecosystem serving various roles, the ACE aligns its components with the school's philosophy and long-term aspirations, ensuring a unified, purposeful vision of growth and development for both students and the educational program as a whole. Second, it's interconnected and interdependent. The ACE mirrors natural ecosystems with different subjects, teaching methodologies, and learning experiences interacting to provide a holistic education. Third, it's dynamic and adaptive. Just as ecosystems adapt to changing conditions, the ACE adjusts to the shifting educational landscape, embracing new technologies, pedagogical practices, and societal needs while remaining committed to its core objectives and principles. Fourth, it's resilient and sustainable. The ACE balances innovative projects and traditional academic subjects, creating a well-rounded education that avoids overwhelming students or compromising quality. This approach reduces Content emphasis, focusing more on skills, perspectives, and meaning making. Fifth, it's growing and evolving. The ACE fosters innovation, creativity, and exploration for students, teachers, and the institution as a whole. Next is nurturing diversity by embracing various educational approaches and frameworks. The ACE leverages on the best aspects of existing systems to create a rich and engaging learning environment for all students. And last but not the least, embracing imperfections perfectly. What does that mean? So just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the world in a perfect balance, that doesn't mean everything within it is perfect. There's disease and disasters, there's good and bad in every component. So similarly, we too must learn to accept, tolerate, and embrace imperfections within each component of our ecosystems. But at the same time, we too must strive to achieve the most perfect balance humanly possible in the overall ecosystem, and especially when it comes to teaching and learning. So now that we've talked about these abstract concepts and frameworks and theories and ecosystems, let's take a closer look at how the adaptive curriculum ecosystem comes to life at Generations. We'll start by looking at some external frameworks that we have been incorporating and embedding into the Generations curriculum and leveraging on their strengths to make the Generations learning experience stronger, more holistic, and more robust. So a good place to start is the Cambridge framework and Cambridge resources. To help us focus on what really matters, we've embraced the Cambridge curriculum framework for English, math, and science from grade 1 to grade 9. And of course, this then leads on to the Cambridge O and A levels. These curriculum standards from Cambridge serve as anchor points within our ever evolving curriculum and let us tap into their ecosystem of teaching materials, resources, professional development, and assessments. This benchmarking against such a well-recognized international curriculum framework enables better identification of strengths and weaknesses and pushes all stakeholders to raise the bar in academic competencies, skill development, and creative teaching methodologies. These well laid out learning outcomes also resolve many of our internal disputes and struggles between the various sections and the teams of the school with regards to the scope and sequence in these subjects, resulting in a more stable base for collaboration, for transdisciplinary and project-based learning, and a whole lot more. Moving on, in a similar fashion, we follow Pakistan's national curriculum for Urdu language, which, although less structured than Cambridge, allows us to make the most of the best books and resources available for Urdu here in Pakistan. The next framework is something that we've come across recently. This year, we've started teaming up with CEF, the Character Education Foundation, to create innovative teaching resources and methodologies for teaching various aspects of the Quran, like tajweed, understanding the Quran, fahm, and character development through the Quran and the Seerah. We're excited about this collaboration, hoping that the resulting curriculum and books will significantly enhance our focus on the Quran across the age groups, making it more engaging and accessible for students, inshallah. Moreover, having a well-structured Quran curriculum will enable a much more meaningful and deeper integration of the Quran with various other disciplines and projects on a systematic level. Next, the robotics framework from the first LEGO League. We've been able to leverage these frameworks in much broader areas. The FLL framework for projects, assessment of skills, competition formats, and much more have played a significant role within our ecosystem as well. This has opened up even more opportunities for students and encouraged them to prepare with greater enthusiasm and greater rigor, not just for robotics and STEM-based learning, but across the school. Next is the leadership program, Over the past couple of years, our Flourishing Leadership Program has been further enriched and strengthened by Franklin Covey's Leader in Me program for schools, which is based on Stephen Covey's renowned book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This program equips students with essential leadership and life skills, helping them find successful strategies for both private as well as public aspects of success in their life. It teaches aspects like responsibility, goal setting, prioritization, collaboration, and effective communication. The program also provides invaluable tools and frameworks for institutional culture and leadership, such as effective goal setting, collaboration, and community engagement. Just like the Cambridge program, this too provides great opportunities for international exposure and collaborations for staff and students alike, and serves as a scaffolding for improvement in practices across various aspects of the school. The implementation of this program has been quite a journey, and we might just be on track to become South Asia's first lighthouse school. And this is a recognition given to schools that are able to demonstrate excellence and rigor in implementing the various aspects of the Leader in Me program. So now we come to the mechanisms. We've discussed these tried and tested frameworks, but how do we make sure that they're not pulling us in different directions? That's where the generation syllabus scheme comes in, the GSS. It's compiled by the relevant subject experts and approved institutionally to ensure coherence, and it acts as a benchmark for tracking progress. The GSS outlines which parts of the external frameworks we incorporate, when, how, and to what depth we incorporate them. It also explains how they'll be assessed and how they tie into generation's unique blend of multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary integrations. Effectively, this is where the many different threads and strands from all directions get woven into one consolidated material and one consolidated pattern. The next area worth discussing is Project Rapt. The GSS has helped us take transdisciplinary projects like the town planning example I mentioned earlier to new heights. Teachers from various disciplines know precisely which concepts will be taught in each subject and when they'll be taught, allowing for quite seamless integration if it's planned well. Central teams can now embed these connections right into the syllabus scheme so that they're part of the mainstream and not just an add-on that each teacher needs to decide or to opt into. This leads to quite serendipitous moments for students where subjects naturally complement each other in a project or in various activities. As an example, I recently came across a grade 5 math lesson on data visualization and bar graphs. The RUP approach incorporated an activity at the end of the lesson with students analyzing the bar graphs of their home electric bills and discussing their insights with their parents. The science teacher would then pick up from there in an upcoming science lesson on energy conservation, for example. And of course, then the chain continues. So this approach not only integrates and connects between the various disciplines and subjects, but it integrates the students' day-to-day context, and it makes their learning come alive for them and their parents equally. Over the years, we've emphasized skills-based teaching and learning, focusing not just on content, but also on the underlying skills like research, evaluation, or collaboration. This year, Project RUPT has gone a step further by formally incorporating these 21st century skills into assessments and reporting, instead of merely admiring a child's impressive scale drawing, for instance, of their dream neighborhood. We now pay more attention to the skills they demonstrated through the experience. Did they improve their collaboration skills? Were they able to thoughtfully critique and evaluate their friend's plan, and so on? The third is lesson augmentation. Now, this is another exciting layer that the teams are currently working towards. The core idea is that fundamental concepts crucial to our lives and success should be reflected in, or at least not contradict with, our mainstream subjects. Otherwise, we risk widening the gap between students' perceived reality and our moral, religious, and cultural values. These essential life skills might involve our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gratitude. They may involve financial literacy. They may involve contemporary global issues like climate change and our role in addressing them. So from an implementation standpoint, augmented lessons should be seamless for both students and teachers, encompassing their books, teacher guides, lesson plans, assessments, etc. So instead of leaving teachers on their own devices to integrate various ideas and concepts independently, through lesson augmentation, this ensures an institutional and systematic approach that all teachers can have access to. As an example, an English lessons learning outcome might be deducing morals from a fable. Students could read and discuss a fable about an ant saving food for the winter, while a grasshopper is busy playing music and mocks the ant. It's a perfectly fine lesson. However, imagine if children learn seamlessly at this point that while saving for the winter is vital, what's even more important is saving or investing for the akhirah, for example. Saving for winter may sometimes require selfishness, just like that the ant did in that story. But saving and investing for the akhirah requires cooperation, collaboration, empathy, and so much more. And of course, the rewards for that sort of investment will be exponential rather than linear. This approach may not demand an extra effort from teachers, but its impact on students will inshallah be far more profound than if they only encountered such thoughts or concepts in their Jummah khutbahs or their Islamia textbooks. So this really brings those concepts to life in what students perceive to be the real subject, to be the mainstream. Another really critical mechanism is the portfolio. There's a quote often attributed to Einstein that goes, "Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts." And of course, as Muslim educators, we understand that education and character development go far beyond grades, numbers, or any conventional measures that usually can be counted. Over the years, we have been working to make teaching and learning more holistic and broad-based, but we often faced the challenge of parents and teachers focusing primarily, or at least disproportionately, on the grades, which stifled our initiatives for broader learning. We realized the need to not only educate and raise awareness about broader education aims, but also ensure that this narrative was reflected in student report cards. So this led us to revamp the entire structure, and not just the structure, but the mechanism of reporting. So today, alhamdulillah, we have the progress report portfolios. These portfolios showcase a student's overall profile, learning progress, and aspirations. They still contain grades, but those are just one of many factors that you'll see in here. For instance, when you open it up on the first page, you'll see the child's photograph and the face, the school vision, the school objectives, the child's own work, hadith here, the child's own work and creativity, and of course this then becomes part of the portfolio and almost a memory. And even when we do sort of have some quantifiable aspects, we aim for them to be as broad as practically possible, so that they encompass personal development, social and emotional development, expressive art, work habits and skills, following instructions, working independently, tidies up cooperatively, listening, speaking, reading, and so on, and lead their leadership roles, their peers and their friends and their class photographs, what the events and activities that happened in this in the relevant time period, what happened across the school, and what their class's mission statement was for their particular class, and so on. So overall, this becomes a very comprehensive storytelling exercise of what is important in terms of students' learning, students' progress, students' success and achievement. So in this storytelling exercise, it highlights the areas and the learning strands and a glimpse of the learning strands at generations. And these learning strands, of course, extend far beyond the usual subjects. So it includes the clubs and the societies and the various activities that the students are expected to experience and learn through. And it ends with a verse from Allama Iqbal, तेरे इल्म मोहब्बत की नहीं है इंतहा कोई, नहीं है तुझसे बढ़कर साज़े फितरत में नवा कोई. So the English translation is, there is no limit to your knowledge, nor to your love. In the instrument of nature, there is no sweeter song than you. So it's encouraging that broader perspective, that self-affirmation, and encouraging students especially to explore their full potential far beyond what they can currently imagine. Ultimately, the portfolios bring the school community together, fostering a shared understanding of what truly matters for our children's upbringing. This collective insight is essential as we strive to think different and be different. And it's truly heartening to see the pride in the eyes of the students and the parents when they're sharing their views and reflections based on these portfolios. So hopefully we can start to appreciate how these practices and mechanisms become integral parts of our adaptive curriculum ecosystem, the ACE. The GSS provides a foundation for blending and weaving various frameworks with our institution's context, circumstances, and strategic intents. Building on that, Project RUP creates numerous interconnected and synergistic learning and teaching opportunities that engage students far beyond their textbooks. Lesson augmentation enriches their learning experiences by seamlessly incorporating essential life concepts, life skills, and paradigms into their educational journeys and into their textbooks. And finally, the portfolios drive the narrative of valuing and emphasizing these often neglected aspects of our children's holistic development and growth. So collectively, these elements demonstrate how abstract concepts can have very practical implications, allowing us to bring our wings with roots philosophy to life in a meaningful manner. Alhamdulillah. Of course, in reality, such initiatives come with their own set of challenges, and we often encounter turbulences from various directions. But then again, it was never meant to be easy, and it was never meant to be perfect. So now for the final leg of this presentation, I'd like to share some glimpses into the deliberation and direction setting we're striving for in our educational program. Most of it happens to center around setting the right compass, determining our goals, recognizing blind spots, and finding ways to broaden, deepen, consolidate, simplify, and amplify. This calls for clarity on the overarching objectives and priorities of the learning ecosystem. At Generations, our ultimate goal is to orient the ecosystem towards Allah-centric excellence, or Allah-centric ihsan, ACE. This means aligning all the knowledge, skills, and practices with the ultimate aim of attaining Allah's pleasure and Allah's mercy. This Allah-centric orientation serves as the guiding principle, the qibla, if you will, for the entire ecosystem, determining what to include and how various components should align with this greater purpose. By prioritizing Allah-centric excellence, the adaptive curriculum ecosystem ensures that every aspect of education that is included within it brings students and educators closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fostering spiritual growth alongside academic and personal development. Of course, there's a lot that we can talk about, but for now, I may just have time to share glimpses of two aspects of this ACE framework, and each of those aspects aims to address a set of questions. The first set of questions is, how do we help students understand what is expected of them for true success? And how do we then equip them and empower them to be able to perform their best in all those domains? And these questions are addressed by the outer ring in this framework that we see here on the screen in blue. This blue ring symbolizes what is physically and visibly manifested by a person in terms of his actions, leadership, and performance. And the ring consists of what we can call the 7 streams of purpose-driven performance. So, contrary to the dominant idea that students must create a vision for themselves and their leadership roles based on their likes and dislikes or their dreams or their aspirations, we as Muslims are meant to believe that each person has inherent sets or streams of roles and responsibilities as ordained by our Creator, who has appointed us as Khalifa and who will ultimately judge us. These streams cover every aspect of a person's life, guiding them towards purposeful and fulfilling existence. The first stream, or Bodhiya, roles and responsibilities, of course, centers around the relationship between a person and their creator. It revolves around serving and worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and fulfilling one's duties towards him. And as we can imagine, this forms the very basis of the rest of life's roles and responsibilities. And if this one isn't in place, then the rest of our roles and responsibilities will either be missing altogether or at the very least be completely out of balance. The second stream, self-care roles and responsibilities, focuses on taking care of oneself, the most crucial amana, including one's body, mind, heart, soul, our time, and our energies. By developing a deeper understanding of our strengths, weaknesses, and limitations, we can constantly improve and self-actualize, reaching higher levels of well-being and performance in all aspects of life. The third stream, meaning-making roles and responsibilities, it's about making meaning from knowledge and experiences, both good and bad, and learning from positive and negative role models. It involves understanding the world, learning from others' experiences, and guiding others towards goodness and towards steadfastness. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And doing so irrespective of the context and the circumstances. And this includes our roles as lifelong learners and our role as educators. The fourth stream, family roles and responsibilities, emphasizes the sacredness of the family in Islam. It's about fulfilling our roles and responsibilities towards our parents, grandparents, spouse, children, in-laws, and maintaining healthy relationships within the family unit. Students also gain an understanding of the importance and sanctity of gender and gender roles, the central role of nikah, and the pitfalls of not following Allah's guidelines in these areas. The fifth stream, community roles and responsibilities, centers on our responsibility towards the broader community, including friends, neighbors, colleagues, and even institutions like mosques, parks, and schools. It's about creating a positive and safe environment and contributing to the betterment of the community in various contexts and settings. The sixth stream, professional and entrepreneurial roles and responsibilities, addresses our careers and professional lives and relationships. It includes managing money, businesses, job applications, employer-employee relationships, strategic planning for professional success, financial literacy, and so on. And lastly, the seventh stream, citizen and ummati roles and responsibilities, relates to our responsibilities as global citizens and members of the Ummah. It's about understanding and addressing broader contemporary issues and challenges, including international matters, and advocating for and working towards positive change in light of our values. So as we can see, these streams are progressive and they're built upon one another. By understanding and balancing each of these streams, individuals can lead a fulfilling and purposeful life and make a positive impact on society. More importantly, students get support from a framework to balance the numerous roles, responsibilities, and temptations that fill their daily lives and life trajectories, enabling them to constantly evaluate themselves from the ultimate lens of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Allah-centric excellence. And this leads us to the second set of questions. What are the different types of knowledge and how do they relate? And how does any of this knowledge relate to our overall success? And what can we do to identify and address our blind spots in this regard? This is addressed by the middle ring in green that represents the ilm, the knowledge and the skills that we're trying to teach. In this regard, inspiration came from some of the Quranic verses that we all hold dear to our hearts. The first few verses of Surah Rahman. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان. Ar-Rahman. So this is about developing an understanding of the Creator, His attributes, and nurturing our faith daily by trusting in Him, recognizing His presence, and appreciating His guidance in our lives. And we need to ask ourselves the question, does our education do justice to this? Second, the Quran, acknowledging the Quran as the ultimate guidance, striving to gain knowledge and skills to access that guidance, and endeavoring to embody the attributes and attitudes required to live the Quran for success in this life and the hereafter. Third, insan, delving into humanity's creation, the expectations set from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because ultimately He will be the judge. Exploring human history, culture, society, and the challenges and responsibilities of being human, empowering students to make meaningful choices and actions for self and societal betterment. And again, does our curriculum do justice to these aspects? Bayan is all about celebrating the power of creative expression bestowed upon mankind, in how to interpret the creative expressions from people across the ages, and how do we understand and realize our potential to influence others towards good or towards bad. And of course, this encompasses the languages, the arts, and the skills of communication and collaboration. Husban is all about appreciating the divine beauty, patterns, aesthetics, and precision in creation, to recognize Allah's wisdom, oneness, and glory, realizing that Allah has given insan the tools to harness these creations and these patterns for his benefit. And of course, this involves math, science, technology, and so much more. The litmus test here is that each of these areas of knowledge must lead to a direct enhancement in both directions. Intensified submission on the inside, our beliefs and paradigms, and greater, more conscious balance on the outside in terms of our actions, leadership, and performance. So on the inside is yasjudan, a heightened state of belief and faith, characterized by an ever-increasing awe, humility, submission, and devotion, and indeed fondness for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a sustained awareness and consciousness of what Allah expects from us at all times. And on the outer side, we've discussed the blue ring, the performance, and the most important aspect in that performance is not the quality of performance in any one of those areas, but rather the mizan, the balance. In this context, it's the balancing act required for us to fulfill the obligations, the roles, and responsibilities that we have in this world as Khalifa, continually striving for that balance in all aspects of life. And as educators, our primary concern must be bettering the balance of focus and of performance across the spectrum towards true and eternal success. So when knowledge and skills in these areas permeate our learners' hearts and souls, ultimately affecting their beliefs and perceptions and paradigms on the inside, and their balance of priorities and performance on the outside, that's what results in the state of ihsan, true beauty, true excellence, and the highest levels of God consciousness. And of course, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the later part of Surah Rahman,
هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
ihsan is pursuing excellence and beauty in education by continuously and consciously realigning teaching and learning to heighten students' inner beliefs and perceptions and their outer leadership priorities and performance. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, is the ongoing search and struggle, our perpetual pursuit for ihsan, with its highs and lows and imperfections. And ultimately, this quest for ihsan continues. So over to you, Sister Laila.
Hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Wow, mashallah, mashallah, tabarakallah. That was quite a journey. And now I understand why you said you had to put this in a video. Where to begin? First of all, may Allah reward your mother for having the vision and the courage to do something different than what we encounter most often. And then for that courage to continue to evolve and really generate what you have here. And it seems like it's a continuing journey. And I know that even in our first conversation, you said, this is a work in progress. This is something we're still working on and developing. And I think having the insight to understand that is probably the reason you are where you are, knowing that you don't get to a point and then stop. It's constantly something you're evolving. So we had a couple of questions in the beginning, but I think most of the comments are just people are just very inspired by what they've seen. I know that for me, I was, mashallah, the aesthetic, the design of the school was the first I guess, inspiring notion, in that you took the time to create the open spaces, the light, that the connection to nature, and you use that term repeatedly, the connectivity, interconnectivity, and you have something grounded like a building, but you're also connected to the light and in nature, and that weaved through your entire presentation. I have a question before we go to the questions. May Allah continue to give you success in this on this journey, inshallah, that you reach our children's hearts and minds and make them the leaders that we need them to be. How do you maintain, with a staff and a student body this large, how do you maintain that you're all aligned and on the same page with the vision that you have, especially one that seems to be ever changing?
Jazakallah khair for that. And yes, that's a very important question and important aspect that I didn't get time to include in the story. And of course, there's so many aspects. But with regards to the staff and the alignment of the staff, of course, as with everything else, it won't it will never be perfectly aligned. However, alhamdulillah, there are massive efforts in place and mechanisms in place to align to a great extent the vision, the values, the aspirations, and the initiatives that is done. The CPD programs are quite strongly in place. So whether it's the annual conferences, and we spend 2 or 3 days every year, the entire day, just to, with the entire staff to make sure that we're all on the same page on what the intents for the year are and what the challenges are and so on. Beyond that, pretty much 4 or 5 days a week, we have the morning meetings every single day. The staff meets for 10 to 15 minutes. These days, post-COVID, it's been online. And then weekly CPD sessions, again, school-wide sessions which are called values and leadership sessions, VNL sessions. Again, they talk about those values. And these are all not including the professional development sessions that happen for any particular academic subjects. So these are all sort of institutional alignment CPD sessions that take place quite regularly and frequently. And alhamdulillah, hats off to the team who constantly keep up, and not just keep up, but actually lead through these changing, fast evolving circumstances. So, and we can spend a whole hour talking about just the professional development and the alignment within the team.
Yeah.
But we'll have to leave for another day, inshallah.
All right. But it sounds like even your connection with your staff, or the connection with the staff with each other, is really important. You said that you have those long-term professional development, but meeting every day, that's really valuable. I don't think I've ever heard of a school that meets on a daily or almost daily basis. And those
and that's been in place for nearly 30 years now. And up until COVID, that was a daily practice. 15 minutes every day, every morning, and the entire staff. And if you, one of the marvels of architecture on our campus is the principal office, which I haven't shown you yet. And that principal office is quite massive. And so every time someone walks in, we have to explain that, the reason it's massive is not because the principal likes having a large office, but the entire staff would meet every single day there and would be packed with like sardines. I think it accommodated up until we had 300 or 400 teachers. But then beyond a certain point, we just had to sort of abandon that and move to the auditorium and larger spaces. But until quite recently, every single morning, 15 minutes in the principal office. And as I said, this is all institutional alignments, whether it's the Quran or institutional policies or the current affairs or hadith and so on. So that's been quite a rigorous program that continues.
It's brilliant. But if I would like to see the principal's office in person, so an invitation would be welcome. We don't have to do video. I want to see if there are any questions, because I think it was mostly comments. I'm going through. What do you believe? What do you believe is the flagship?
And sorry to hear from Brother Idris. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm sorry. I was trying to. I'm reading one of the questions. What do you believe is the flagship program at Generation School?
The flagship program. The flagship program, I think I noticed that question as well, and that was like early on in the video. I'm not entirely sure about the context to that question, but I would hope and I would redirect the attention to the video to today's presentation.
Okay.
That there is no one flagship program. The flagship program is the Generations program, and we call that the Wings with Roots. And within that, alhamdulillah, the whole point is that there are plenty of programs that are working to a great degree of synergy and synchronization. And depending on what lens you look at, you can name 10 different programs to be the flagship programs, whether it's the Cambridge for the academics, or the teacher training, or the robotics, or the professional development, and so on. But because they're all working in sync, they ultimately act as one mega program, and that's what this whole story was about: the adaptive curriculum ecosystem and the Allah-centric excellence.
Yeah. And I think that that's absolutely what makes this a unique school, is that it is all interconnected. And even your presentation, you began with the connection to nature, Allah's creation, and you ended with Allah-centric excellence in the verses of Ar-Rahman, and connecting all of that, mashallah. It, when in your video, you can see the spaces, like students are sitting on the floor, the levels, the actual levels of the tables and the movement, um, the holistic aspect is that they're able to move, that they're able to shift, they're connected to the outside world, they're working on meaningful things. The whole concept of holistic education is weaved throughout. I think it's awe-inspiring, because it seems like you have it together, but how you got to this point, can you tell us how that journey, how much change has occurred, and how recent has it been to get you to the point where you are now?
How much time do we have? How many hours do we have? No, no. Of course, of course it is a very extensive exercise, and as I said, it's a heartfelt hats off to the team who, because at this scale, it's not for one person or even one team to do that. It's a team of teams who's been doing it. But then again, it's all about how you pull it together at the institutional level. In that regard, our strategic plan, a very solid, documented strategic plan, has helped. Again, I didn't get the chance to share it in this video, but that's a very important mechanism in this regard. Similarly, the vision statements, the mission statements, and so on, and they really help in sort of orienting the qibla of everyone involved, and that's all the stuff that we then sort of share on an annual basis with the entire staff. Every summer, we spend 2 to 3 days on that, and various aspects of it, and how it relates to our teaching and learning, and what challenges are we envisioning to face. So, for example, many schools talked about resilience in the recent years, especially in the context of COVID and other things. We had been talking about resilience for the past many years, quite actively. We had been talking about economic and technological transformations and so on. So in some ways, it's latent within the entire culture of the school to be sort of to have our eyes on the ball, as they say. And of course, as with any institution and as with any school, the day-to-day challenges are so great that you hardly ever get time to really focus on the long term. But then, alhamdulillah, whenever we do get that chance, we really are able to take it forward. And as an example, when COVID hit, it was just within I'm forgetting the exact number of days, but it was something like 3 to 5 days when we were able to fully pivot the school to an online learning platform and so on. So that is just an example and an illustration of how sort of agile and nimble the entire team is, and that requires a lot of sort of foresight and planning. Of course, we couldn't plan for COVID, but planning in terms of the ability to be able to react and the ability to be able to respond to anything that comes your way. So that might be new technologies or new economic constraints or new curricular constraints or challenges or new opportunities that come your way, and how do you incorporate and adapt them to that ecosystem.
Oh, mashallah, mashallah. May Allah reward you all and your team. A lot of them have joined us. I see a lot of Genarians in the chat. Welcome to all of you, and it's great to have you here. Your work is amazing, and you've inspired people around the world today. One of my favorite...
sorry to interrupt. I had been quite anxious at seeing these comments by Genarians, because I wasn't sure whether they'd recognize the school how I portray it, because I've had to sort of adapt a few things for the international audience and context. So I'll be looking forward to those that feedback, inshallah.
All I see in the chat is a lot of pride in being a Genarian. mashallah. And as well, you should take pride in this beautiful, beautiful and inspirational project. One of my favorite things that you said today is embracing imperfection perfectly and allowing, I love the idea of allowing students to make mistakes and embrace mistakes and learning, because that's how we learn. And I think a lot of times we become so focused on doing things right that we forget how important it is to value those. Can you talk a little bit about what that means for your students and your staff, that embracing imperfection?
Embracing imperfection. Of course, it can mean a lot of different things at different layers. In terms of mistakes with the students, part of it, as I shared with you, the progress portfolios, and I didn't get a chance to share some glimpses of the leadership portfolios, which is slightly different but interrelated. Is also that there is no one linear route to success or to excellence, and you have to provide multiple pathways, non-linear pathways. So whether that could be academics, but that equally that could be so many of the other pathways, of whether that's to do with student leadership or events or sports and so on. So so that's part of, and no one is expected to be perfect in any given dimension, but the whole beauty is how we sort of build our strengths in the different areas so that they complement each other. So that's at the level of the students, and of course you can elaborate on the same at the level of the teachers and the teams and so on. But from the lens that I was, from the perspective of this presentation today, it's how we evaluate our teaching and learning and the impact that teaching and learning has on our students, on the next generation. Are we preparing them for that imperfect for the perfect balance in their roles? Because obviously, as educators, often we tend to focus on preparing them for their careers or for their college and so on. But are we preparing them for their family roles? Are we preparing them for their professional or entrepreneurial roles? Are we preparing them for the akhirah, to be standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And that could be as soon as tonight for some of us. So that's what I meant by the 7 streams, and how do we strive it? You'll never get there, but how do we strive towards some sort of a balance between the 7 streams, and how do we equip and empower students towards performance in all those areas, rather than just putting all the eggs in one basket or 1 or 2 baskets. And when we do put our eggs in all areas, each of those areas will likely be quite imperfect. But we have to embrace that imperfection along the way. Otherwise, as I say, good is the enemy of great. So let's not obsess ourselves by being perfect or even better at 1 or 2 of those areas until we can cover all the bases.
Mashallah, mashallah, and all the time seeking ihsan, as you beautifully recited as well. Jazakallah khair for that explanation. Are there any questions in here that we need to touch on before? I think it says, do you have, I am intrigued by the ACE concept. What is your approach in teaching science? Do you have your own curriculum that puts Allah at the center, or are you integrating Islam within an existing curriculum? I think this was, would you say this was covered in a video with all the interconnections and the weavings and the specific external programs that you discussed, like Cambridge and the Pakistani curriculum? And I think those were answered in his presentation. You may want to rewind and replay to kind of capture some of the things.
And of course, if there are any further details or further examples, I'd be happy to sort of illustrate.
Would you like to add to that? To the
I
question?
think as you covered that, and if anyone, Brother Asad or anyone else has any specific questions in that regard, I'd be happy to answer that. On some probably over email.
Right. Would you mind sharing your email for questions, and maybe sharing out resources, or the school email maybe? I think with the educators listening, there may be a lot of questions that are maybe you can answer later. If
Sure. So maybe you could put that on the video description. That'll help. Otherwise, my email address is s.siddiqui@generations.edu.pk. So it's s.siddiqui @generations.edu.pk.
Okay. We are at an hour and 20. So I'm going to ask if you have any final words to close with, and then I'll just close out for us, inshallah. What would you like to close with today, Brother Shoaib?
No, alhamdulillah. Thank you for this opportunity. And as you mentioned, alhamdulillah, the Generations team has been enthusiastically, passionately involved and in fact, leading this entire struggle and strife. And this is, alhamdulillah, this is all as a result of that synergy and that common vision that we all share. So humbled by that, alhamdulillah. And of course, as I say, anything good is from Allah. So may Allah accept that. And of course, with Ramadan around the corner, I'd request everyone to just remember us in your prayers. And inshallah, may Allah accept it from us all.
Ameen. May Allah accept it from you. Thank you so much. Jazakumullah khair. The Generation School really has shown us that as Muslim educators and Islamic school educators, there is so much more to strive for, and we can become a more holistic school where we don't separate courses or classes or content, and try to teach a character program separately from a robotics program. I love the idea of really teaching a whole child that actually lives a whole life. And their relationships are actually part of what they're learning. So may Allah reward the founder of the school and all of those who have come after and still continue to work in the school to really educate our children to be Allah-centric leaders. And may we all see these types of successes in our schools, inshallah. You have earned a certificate of appreciation, and it is signed by our dear brother Muhammad Zafar Ahmed, who is the head of our steering committee at the Global Association of Islamic Schools. As the host of the GAIS Spotlight, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you again, Brother Shoaib, for sharing your school with us. Jazakumullah khair wherever you are in the world, and we will see you next time on the GAIS Spotlight. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In Ramadan Mubarak, inshallah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.